Hello there. After the resignation of Liz Truss, the Conservative Party wants to fill her position again, as I said this morning. The opposition does not want to accept this and is calling for new elections. Truss' resignation is the logical consequence of the past few weeks. And now all Britons should decide on their successor. Liz Truss has resigned, finally. The decision was overdue, and yet it is not enough. The Tories now want to find a successor within a week. However, this will lack democratic legitimacy, no matter who the Conservative Party chooses, and that twice in a row. Truss has completed 45 days in office. After the chaos surrounding her predecessor Boris Johnson, she should have brought stability to Downing Street, and only managed quite the opposite. After Finance Minister Kwasi Kwarteng presented plans for more new debt and lower taxes, not least for top earners, the financial markets collapsed. The project was supposed to strengthen the ailing British economy, though, but they didn't. Relieve the rich of all people in a crisis? Well, that was the beginning of the end for the outgoing Prime Minister. Tensions within the party grew, and poll numbers for the opposition Labour Party rose to their highest levels since the late 1990s, when the party moved into 10 Downing Street with Tony Blair. Truss and Kwarteng responded with an initial U-turn, but the damage was already done. Even the fact that the Prime Minister ruled out a cut in government spending a little later did not bring about peace. And then, after just 38 days in office, Truss dismissed her Minister Kwarteng in a desperate attempt to buy herself time. She failed. On Wednesday, Interior Minister or Home Secretary Suella Braverman became the next member of the government to leave. The pressure on the Prime Minister was actually almost unbearable for her, despite saying she's a fighter, not a quitter. The next act of the British political soap opera followed. PMQs in Parliament, which for Truss was hard to beat in terms of embarrassment. First, the House of Commons booed the PM, then some of her own faction MPs opposed Truss in a vote on gas fracking, despite being heavily pressured to vote in favour of the Tory line beforehand. She didn't even dare to keep it a vote of no confidence as she wanted beforehand. After all, nothing could straighten out Truss' admission that she had a difficult day, and her resignation on Thursday was a long overdue consequence. The offices of Prime Minister and Party Leader are inextricably linked in Great Britain. After more and more MPs publicly withdrew their confidence, Truss lacked the backing for both. The following applied then. For the office of Head of Government, she actually lacked the democratic legitimacy before. After all, as the successor to Boris Johnson, she only had to face the vote of her party, never that of the British voters. This is a problem that also threatens her successor. Ex-Chancellor of the Exchequer Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt, who is responsible for parliamentary questions and stuff, and Defence Secretary Ben Wallace are being dealt with. Sunak and Mordaunt were also unsuccessful against Truss in the battle to succeed Johnson. They would therefore only be the third choice after Johnson and Truss. That is not enough for a democracy to be taken seriously. Under the Tories, around a third of party members had recently even wished for Boris Johnson back. However, a return of the scandal Prime Minister should deal the final death blow to the reputation of the British government. The resignation of Truss as party leader of the Conservative Tories is already fixed, and Liz Truss wants to step down as Prime Minister as soon as the successor has been decided. The Conservative Tory faction wants to fill the position by October 31st. Numerous voices from the opposition are not satisfied with this. Labour leader Keir Starmer immediately called for new general elections. The Tories cannot just snap their fingers and change the people at the helm without the consent of the people, said the Labour leader. And he said, we need parliamentary elections now. Starmer declared his willingness to take over the business of British government. We are ready to form a government. That's what he told Sky News already on Thursday. After the departure of Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, a Tory-determined succession would, for the second time in a row, put someone in the country's highest office who was not popularly elected. The Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon also described a new election on the short message service Twitter as a democratic imperative. There are no words to describe this utter shambles adequately, so Sturgeon. Ordinary citizens would have to pay the price for this. The interest of the Conservative Party, which wants to find a successor to Truss within a week, should now play no role. And the Liberal Democrats, with whom former Conservative Prime Minister David Cameron once formed a government, have also expressed outrage at Truss' plans to hold office through an internal party vote. Liberal Party leader Ed Davey wrote that the Conservatives must get out of Downing Street. We do not need another Conservative Prime Minister who lurches from one crisis to the next, said Davey. The dual leadership of the British Greens is also campaigning for new elections. Co-leader Carla Denier stressed that the Tory party was in too deep a crisis to form a functioning government. The German federal government where I'm living initially did not comment officially on Truss' resignation announcement, but for a short time, however, a probably accidental reaction from the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Protection was seen on Twitter. A link to the music video Can't Truss It by the hip-hop group Public Enemy appeared for a few minutes under a breaking news report from the BBC. And France is one of the few public reactions from foreign governments. President Emmanuel Macron expressed concern about the political situation in the UK in the wake of Truss' resignation. Against the background of the war in Ukraine, tensions over energy and even greater crises, it's important that the country quickly regains political stability. That's what he said on the sidelines of the EU summit on Thursday. By the way, if you want to know more about the German stuff, have a look at my European video today. This is also the wish of France as a friend of the British people. Saying goodbye to Truss, he said, "I'm always sad when colleagues leave." He has always had very constructive meetings with Truss, most recently at the summit of the new European political community in Prague. On the fringes of the summit, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte emphasized that he was looking forward to working with Truss' successor. And Ireland's Prime Minister, the Taoiseach Micheál Martin, stressed, "Stability is very important and we would like to see the UK system being able, within its capabilities, to select a successor as soon as possible." This is of particular importance for Ireland as the UK's closest neighbour. And EU Parliament President Roberta Metsola saw the resignation of the British Prime Minister as a lesson that other Europeans could learn from. Rhetoric can bring down a government, the Maltese said on Thursday on the sidelines of the EU summit. She also put the events of the past few weeks in context. "I think it's a message that market instability can lead to democratic instability." Metsola said she hopes this unstable situation will be resolved soon. The European Parliament will continue to work with Great Britain. When we make decisions, especially economic ones, we have to be aware of the possible effects, said the Speaker of the Parliament. And US President Joe Biden emphasized the close connection between the two countries after Truss' resignation. The United States and Great Britain are strong allies and friends, and this fact will never change, Biden said in a statement on Thursday. I say, except when they break international law on Northern Ireland. Among other things, Biden thanked Truss for her cooperation in holding Russia accountable for the war of aggression in Ukraine. The US would continue to work closely with the British government there. And the Russian government also spoke up. "Britain has never had such a disgrace as Prime Minister," said a spokeswoman for Russia's foreign ministry. "Truss will be remembered for her catastrophic illiteracy." Truss had pledged her support to Ukraine in the war against the Russian invaders. So, new elections are needed now, even if the Tories have little interest given the polling high of the competing Labour Party. Nevertheless, this would be the only right step in terms of democracy, and a resounding defeat would be the reward for what could hardly be described as government work in the past few months. I would even add years. A fresh political start is needed in Britain, and the Tories need time to sort themselves out and find a serious party leadership. Before that, they no longer have any place in government. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.